The station Astra Meridian hung in the darkness of space like a jewel suspended in black water. Its lights twinkled softly, reflecting off the hulls of ships from 8 different civilizations. Inside its grand conference chamber, history was about to break into pieces. Commander Jiwoo stepped through the tall doors of the meeting hall. He was a tall man with sharp eyes that had seen many battles and many worlds. His uniform was deep blue, marked with the symbols of humanity's space forces. Next to him walked Ha-Na, the woman who had spent 15 long years trying to build bridges between humanity and the stars. Her face was calm, but her hands were tight. She knew what was coming. The conference chamber was a wonder of alien engineering. The walls curved upward into a dome that showed the real stars outside. 8 great seats circled the room, each one shaped for a different kind of body. The Vexthier chair was sharp and angular, made of crystal that hummed with a soft blue light. The Thessar seat was filled with cool water that bubbled gently. The insectoid Cathari had a raised platform where they could stand on many legs. Each seat told the story of a different world, a different way of life. But the most important seat held Keln, the ancient Vexthier who spoke for the Galactic Council. Keln's body was tall and thin, made of crystal that glowed from within. His voice sounded like wind through broken glass, beautiful and dangerous. He had lived for thousands of years, and in all that time no young species had ever dared to oppose him. "Humanity," Keln said, his voice filling the whole chamber. "You have come to listen, yes? To accept the Council's will?" Jiwoo stepped forward. His voice was steady and clear. "We came to talk about the future, about how all our people can live together in peace. The colonies we have built in the Outer Rim are home to millions of humans now. These people have families. They have built cities and farms. They have dreams." A low sound came from the Thessar seat. The water rippled with agitation. The Thessar ambassador, whose name was a series of sounds like whale songs, spoke through a translator. "These colonies sit on lands that the Council promised to us. For 500 years we waited. We made plans. We built our future on those worlds. And then humans arrived and took what was ours." Ha-Na stood up. She had worked with the Thessar for many years. She knew their fears and their hopes. "The colonies were empty when we arrived," she said softly. "We sent teams to survey the lands. There were no cities. There were no people. We built from nothing." "But we had claimed those worlds," said another voice. This one came from Cathari, whose 1,000 eyes watched the humans with deep mistrust. "The Council had decided those worlds would be ours. That is the law. That is the order." Jiwoo felt his patience wearing thin like old cloth. He had not come to Astra Meridian to apologize for being human. "The Council made plans for lands that were empty. We made homes on those same lands. Now millions live there. Are you asking us to remove all those people? To leave them homeless? To let them die?" Keln's crystal body glowed brighter. The temperature in the room dropped. "You dare to question the Galactic Council?" His voice was sharp like ice breaking. "In 10,000 years, no species has done such a thing. The Vorga bow. The smaller species know their place, and now the humans, barely 100 years into the stars, come to tell us what is right and wrong?" "We are not saying we are right," Jiwoo said carefully. "We are saying that both our peoples need these worlds. There must be a way to share. There must be compromise." Keln stood from his seat. The whole chamber seemed to shake with his movement. "Compromise. Do you know what compromise means to the Council? It means you will keep your colonies. It means the Thessar will go somewhere else. The Cathari will find other worlds. This is compromise from your view." Ha-Na reached out and touched Jiwoo's arm. She had seen Keln in this mood before. She knew what came next. But Jiwoo was not ready to give up. "Then what do you want?" Jiwoo asked. "Tell us clearly, what must we do?" The crystal voice rang out across the chamber like a bell. "You will leave the outer rim. Every human will withdraw. Every colony will be abandoned. The Thessar and Cathari and all the council species will have these worlds as they were promised. You will return to your little corner of space and wait for permission before you expand again. The council will decide when, if ever, humans are ready to grow further." The silence that followed was heavy and complete. Every eye in the chamber turned toward Jiwoo. Haina closed her eyes. She already knew what he would say. "No," Jiwoo said simply. "We will not do that." Keln's glow became almost unbearable. "You refuse? The Galactic Council extends mercy, and you refuse?" "It is not mercy," Jiwoo said. He was standing straight now, and his voice was strong. "It is punishment for the crime of being young. You want to keep humanity small and weak and obedient. But we will not accept that. We will not abandon our people. We will not surrender what we have built." The other council members began to speak all at once. Their voices mixed together in a chaos of rage and shock. Some demanded immediate military response. Others called for complete economic destruction. The Vorga, reptilian traders who had dealt fairly with humans, looked uneasy, but said nothing. Haina stood up. "The human delegation requests a short pause," she said loudly. "We need to speak with our government. We need time." But Keln raised one crystal hand, and silence fell like a hammer. "There is no need for time. The Council has spoken. You have 30 solar cycles to withdraw all human forces from the outer rim. During this time, you may trade and prepare. But on the 31st cycle, economic sanctions will begin. All Council member species will refuse to trade with humanity. All ships will be turned away. Any human vessel that approaches a Council world will be destroyed." He paused, and his voice became even colder. "And if you have not withdrawn by then, a military blockade will begin. We will starve you out of the outer rim. We will remind you why young species should know their place." Jiwoo wanted to shout back. Wanted to tell Keln that humanity would not be crushed by fear or isolation, but Haina gripped his arm hard, and he stayed silent. "The council is finished," Keln said, and he returned to his crystal seat. "Humans will leave our station within 1 hour. Go back to your ship, go back to your worlds, and decide, will you bow or will you fall?" The two humans walked out of the chamber in silence. Behind them, the voices of the Galactic Council rose in angry discussion. Haina's eyes were filled with tears. 15 years of work, 15 years of building trust and understanding. All of it destroyed in minutes. Jiwoo's jaw was tight. He did not feel despair. He felt something much stronger. As they walked toward the docking bay, he said quietly to Haina, "They have made a mistake. A terrible mistake. They think they can frighten us into surrender. But they do not know what humans are capable of when we are backed into a corner." Haina looked at him with worry in her eyes. She was afraid of what would come next. She was afraid that Jiwoo was right. The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 10,000 years without facing any real opposition. They had never known defeat. And now they were about to learn what it meant to face an enemy that refused to be conquered. The station fell away behind them as their ship jumped into space. On Astra Meridian, Keln sat in his crystal seat and smiled. He was certain of victory. He had no idea that he had just lit a fire that would burn down everything he had built. The Galactic Council chambers erupted into chaos the moment the human delegation left. Species that had worked together for thousands of years suddenly shouted at each other like enemies. The Thessar's water churned and frothed. The Cathari clicked and screamed in their insect language. Even the usually calm Vorga traders looked troubled and confused. Keln stood at the center of the chamber, his crystal form glowing with satisfaction. This was exactly what he had wanted. The young humans had shown their foolish pride, their dangerous arrogance. Now all the council would see that firm strength was necessary. The boy Jiwoo had refused to submit, and soon he would learn the price of such rebellion. But not everyone in the chamber felt the same certainty. Iris 7 sat in the corner designated for the Synth Collective. She was not made of flesh or crystal or water. Iris 7 was an artificial being, born from computer code and advanced technology. Her form was humanoid, but not quite human. Her skin a smooth silver that reflected the light of the chamber. She had come to the Galactic Council only 5 years ago, bringing knowledge from her distant part of space. And in those 5 years she had learned to observe, to think, and to be very, very careful about what she said. But she could not stay silent. Iris 7 stood and raised her hand. The gesture was simple, but the chamber grew quiet. The council members turned to look at her, some with curiosity, others with irritation. Who was this artificial being to interrupt their discussion? "I have something to say," Iris 7 began. Her voice was calm and measured, without emotion. "About humanity." Keln turned toward her slowly. "The Synth Collective has something to teach the Council about the humans? This is surprising. You are new to our meetings." "I have studied humanity," Iris 7 said. "I have read their history and observed their behavior. I want to share what I have learned." "Then speak," said another council member, the ancient Vorga named Thrak, who led the reptilian traders. "But speak quickly. We have much to discuss about punishment and blockades." Iris 7 took a moment before continuing. She knew that what she was about to say would not be popular. Humanity has achieved spaceflight in only 100 years. It took the Thessar 500 years to reach the stars. The Cathari needed 300. The Vorga took 400. But humans reached space in 100 years. "This proves their desperation," said one of the Thessar. "They rushed, clumsy and dangerous." "No," Iris 7 replied. "It proves their capacity for rapid adaptation. In the last 10 years, human military technology has advanced faster than any species the Council has encountered. Their ships are smaller, yes, but their weapons are more efficient. Their tactics are more clever. Their rate of innovation is extraordinary." Keln's glow dimmed slightly. "You suggest we should fear them? An infant species that has barely left their planet?" "I suggest," Iris 7 said carefully, "that imposing a blockade may not work as you expect." The chamber erupted again. The Cathari laughed, a sound like dry leaves blowing. The Thessar's water boiled with anger. How dare this artificial being question the Council's might? The Galactic Council had conquered entire rebellions. They had brought order to countless worlds. A species of young upstarts from a single planet could not possibly challenge them. But Thrak, the Vorga, was listening carefully to every word Iris 7 spoke. Thrak was old and had seen many things. He had survived not by being the strongest, but by being the smartest. And he understood what Iris 7 was really saying. Keln raised his hand again, and the chamber fell silent. "Your words are noted, Iris 7 of the Synth Collective, but they are wrong. The Council has decided. We will impose total economic sanctions. All trade with humanity will stop. All Council member species will refuse to do business with them. Every space gate we control will be closed to human ships, and if they do not withdraw from the Outer Rim in 30 cycles, we will deploy the blockade fleet." He paused, letting his crystal eyes sweep across every member of the Council. "Does anyone oppose this decision?" The chamber was quiet. Even Iris 7 stayed silent. She had said what needed to be said. Some lessons could only be learned through experience. The vote was called. 7 in favor, 1 abstention from the Vorga. The blockade was approved. Later, in the smaller chamber where the real power of the Council was often decided, Keln met with the military commanders. They were pleased with his decision. Too many young species had been growing too fast, they said. Someone needed to remind them of the proper order of things. Humanity was arrogant and needed to be taught humility. Keln agreed with every word. He had not ruled the council for 2,000 years by showing weakness. He had done so by ensuring that everyone knew the consequences of disobedience. The humans would bow, just like everyone else. It was only a matter of time. Meanwhile, aboard a hidden station far from the council's main worlds, something else was happening. Haina, the human diplomat, had requested asylum from the Synth Collective. Iris 7 had granted it without hesitation. They sat together in a small observation room overlooking a view of distant stars. "What will Jiwoo do?" Iris 7 asked. She was genuinely curious. Iris 7's artificial mind processed information very quickly, but sometimes human emotion was difficult for her to predict. Haina looked out at the stars and thought about the human commander. She had known him for 5 years. She knew that he was not a man who accepted surrender easily. "He will prepare for war," Haina said quietly. "The council thinks that economic pressure will break us. They think that isolation will force us to give up. But they do not understand humans. We are like water. Pour us into any shape, and we will fill it. Take away our easy paths, and we will carve new ones." "They will try to crush you," Iris 7 said. It was not a question. "Yes," Haina replied. "And when they do, the council will discover something they have never learned in 10,000 years. They will discover that humans are very hard to crush." Iris 7 processed this information and stored it away. She had a feeling that the Galactic Council was about to make a very serious mistake, and the Synth Collective was going to be very interested in watching what happened next. In the Council's war rooms, ships were being prepared. Blockade fleets were being assembled. The Council was certain of victory. They had the numbers. They had the power. They had the confidence that comes from never having been defeated. What they did not have was any real understanding of their enemy. And that, as Iris 7 had tried to warn them, was the most dangerous miscalculation of all. 30 solar cycles began to count down, like a clock ticking towards something neither the Council nor humanity could fully predict. The Galactic Council had thrown down a challenge, and humanity was preparing to answer in a way that would shake the foundations of the entire galaxy. When Jiwoo's ship arrived back at Earth, the planet was already in motion. The news of the Council's ultimatum had spread across human space faster than light through quantum communications. Millions of people gathered in streets and public squares. Some were afraid, some were angry, but most felt something else entirely. They felt united. Earth's government called an emergency assembly. World leaders from every nation and colony gathered in the Great Hall in New Seoul, the capital of United Earth. Jiwoo was brought before them immediately. He stood at the center of a circular platform, surrounded by the leaders of human civilization. "What happened at Astra Meridian?" the Secretary General asked. She was an old woman named Park Min-kyung, wise and strong, with eyes that had seen much of human history. Jiwoo told them everything. The cold words of Keln, the demands to abandon colonies, the threat of blockade and war. The room grew darker and colder as he spoke. When he finished, there was silence. "We could negotiate," suggested one of the leaders. "We could offer them something, credits, resources, technology." General Park Ho stood up. He was the supreme commander of Earth's combined space force, a man whose entire life had been dedicated to protecting humanity. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a scar running down one side of his face from a ship accident years ago. "Negotiation is over," Park Ho said firmly. "Keln has made it clear. There is nothing we can offer that he wants. He wants us to bow. He wants us to admit that we are less than him, that we do not deserve to expand into space, that we must remain weak and small while older species control everything." The Secretary General turned to him. "What do you propose, General?" War, Park Ho said simply. But not the kind the Council expects. All eyes turned toward him. Park Ho walked to the center of the platform where Jiwoo stood. He activated the holographic display, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images of human space. The Council thinks they can starve us with a blockade, Park Ho began. But they are thinking about this in the wrong way. They are thinking about classic warfare, about moving large fleets across space and controlling territory. This is how they have always operated. This is what they understand. He manipulated the display, showing the routes that human ships took through space. The paths twisted and curved around Council-controlled regions. Our first step will be to develop faster ways to move through space, Park Ho continued. We need to find routes that do not pass through Council-controlled gates. We need to bypass their blockade entirely. We have engineers who can do this. We have scientists who are ready. Captain Minseo stood from her seat. She was the youngest person in the room, barely 40 years old, but she was also the most brilliant military strategist Earth had produced. Her mind worked faster than most people could think, and she had already been considering these problems. The Council's military is larger than ours, Minseo said, but it is also slower and less flexible. They operate with traditional tactics that have worked for 10,000 years. They do not expect innovation. They do not expect change. She moved to stand beside Park Ho. We should focus on 3 things. First, technology. Second, economics. Third, unity. The Secretary General leaned forward. Explain this. Technology, Minseo said, pointing to the holographic display. We must create weapons and ships that are faster, smarter, and more efficient than anything the Council has ever seen. Kyung-il and his team in New Seoul Station have already begun work on quantum phase modifications for our jump gates. If we can bypass Council gates entirely, the blockade becomes useless. She moved her hand, and new data appeared in the air. Economics. The Council controls trade across the galaxy, but they do not control everything. There are species outside the Council. There are independent traders who care more about profit than loyalty to Keln. There are merchants within Council member species who are tired of the Council's control. We need to find them. We need to trade with them. We need to create a network that does not depend on Council approval. The third point made everyone lean back. Unity, Minseo said. The Council is not as united as it appears. The Thessar want marine resources. The Cathari want more territory. The Vorga are traders who care more about business than ideology. If we can show the Council members that the war with humanity is costing them more than they gain, they will abandon it. Park Ho nodded. We do not defeat the Council through direct military conflict. We defeat them by making it too expensive for them to continue the fight. We make the blockade collapse from within. We make the member species question whether they want to continue following Keln's lead. Over the next few days, Earth mobilized like never before. Engineer Kyung-il and his team in New Seoul Station began work on the quantum phase jump gate modifications. Kyung-il was a genius, a man who understood mathematics and physics in ways that seemed almost magical. He worked day and night, barely sleeping, consumed by the challenge. Trader Yun-ji began building networks of human merchants and sympathetic alien traders. She traveled from station to station making deals, building relationships. She was beautiful and charming, but beneath that charm was a mind for business that could not be matched. Within weeks, she had established a black market network that could move human goods into Council space without triggering official blockade mechanisms. General Park Ho began training the human military for a new kind of warfare. Instead of organizing them for traditional fleet battles, he prepared them for rapid strikes, hit-and-run tactics, and the kind of flexibility that would confuse the Council's rigid military hierarchy. The Vorga traders noticed the changes first. They saw human ships appearing in new locations. They saw human goods being offered at better prices. They saw opportunities for profit. Some of them began to ask themselves, Was loyalty to the Council worth losing out on profitable human trade? In the Council's headquarters, none of this activity went completely unnoticed. Reports came in of unusual human activity. Spies reported on Kyung-il's work, but Kelm dismissed these warnings. He was so certain of victory, so confident in the Council's power, that he could not imagine that his plans might fail. He sent a message to all Council member species: prepare for total isolation of humanity. End all trade. Close all borders. The humans would be crushed, starved out, and forced to surrender within the 30-cycle deadline. But as the days passed, something unexpected began to happen. The blockade was not working as planned. Human ships kept appearing in unexpected places. The trade networks were more sophisticated than the Council realized. And beneath it all, a new technology was being developed that would change everything. In the final week of the 30-cycle deadline, Kyung-il made his breakthrough. The quantum phase modifications were complete. Human ships could now use the jump gates in ways that allowed them to bypass Council checkpoints entirely. They could navigate through space using paths that the Council did not control. When Jiwoo heard the news, he smiled. The Galactic Council had given humanity 30 cycles to decide whether to surrender or face war. Humanity had used those 30 cycles not to decide, but to prepare. And when the deadline arrived, humanity was ready. The Council expected to see a broken species begging for mercy. Instead, they found something much more dangerous, a civilization that had adapted, innovated, and united in a way that the ancient Council had not seen in 10,000 years. The game was about to change. The Galactic Council did not yet know it, but they had made a terrible mistake in underestimating humanity, and very soon they would pay the price. The blockade that the Galactic Council had so carefully planned began to unravel almost immediately, not with a bang, but with whispers, with quiet conversations between traders, with small deals made in the shadows, with the realization that the Council's absolute power was not quite as absolute as everyone believed. Trader Yunji sat in a dark corner of a space station called Trader's Rest, located far from Council worlds. Across from her sat a Vorga merchant named Kazrel. The reptilian trader's scales shimmered with patterns that indicated deep thinking. He was older than most traders, wise and careful, and he had survived in the galaxy by knowing which way the wind was blowing before the storm arrived. "You understand the risk," Yunji said quietly. She had learned to communicate with the Vorga in their language, a series of hisses and clicks that most humans found difficult. But Yunji was talented at languages. "If the Council discovers you are trading with humanity, they will impose sanctions against your people." Kazrel's tongue flicked out, tasting the air, a sign of consideration. "The Council has already made the profit margins impossible for traditional merchants. Your human goods are cheaper, better quality, and you pay fairly." He paused. "Why should my people suffer just to make the Council happy?" This was the question spreading through a dozen species now. The Thessar, who had been promised the Outer Rim territories, were beginning to feel the cost of the blockade in their own profit margins. The trade routes they depended on were disrupted. The prices for goods they needed were rising. And for what? To punish humans who had simply built colonies in empty space? The Cathari were experiencing something different. The insectoid species operated as a hive mind, with thousands of smaller communities working together toward collective goals. But that collective mind was beginning to fracture. Different colony clusters questioned whether the war with humanity was worth the resources being spent. Some Cathari traders wanted to deal with humans secretly. The Council threatened them with punishment, but threats were becoming less effective when the punishment meant economic loss that hurt everyone. Most dangerous to the Council's unity were the Vorga. The reptilian traders were the economic backbone of much of the Council's trade network. When Yunji approached them with offers of profitable human trade, they found themselves facing a choice: loyalty to the council or survival through commerce. Many chose commerce. Within weeks, human goods were flowing into council space through Vorga merchant networks. Kyung-il's advanced technology was being smuggled and sold to species that had never seen such innovations. Yunji's trading network was growing so large that it was beginning to affect the entire economy of the galaxy. Keln heard the reports and grew angry. He called for stricter enforcement of the blockade. He demanded that the Vorga cease all trade with humanity immediately. When they refused, he threatened sanctions against the entire Vorga civilization. The Vorga's response shocked the Council. They openly announced that they would continue trading with humanity. If the Council wanted to punish them for conducting free commerce, that was the Council's choice. But the Vorga would not abandon their business partners simply to serve the Council's pride. It was an act of open defiance that had not been seen in 10,000 years, and it cracked the Council's unity like ice beneath spring sun. On a hidden synth collective station, Haina sat with Iris 7 in front of a galaxy-wide communication array. Together they had prepared a message that would broadcast across all known space. It was risky. The Council would be furious, but Haina believed that the time for careful silence was over. "Are you certain about this?" Iris 7 asked. Even artificial beings could feel the weight of such decisions. "I spent 15 years trying to make the Council listen through proper channels," Haina replied. "I watched them close their minds and their ears. Now the only way to reach people is to speak directly to them, to tell them the truth about what has happened." Iris 7 activated the broadcast array. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds and stations, the message began to spread. Haina's face appeared, and her voice rang out clearly. "My name is Haina. I was the chief diplomat for humanity in negotiations with the Galactic Council. I want to tell you the truth about what happened. The Galactic Council claims that humanity is arrogant and dangerous. The Council claims that they are defending their own interests. But I was there. I heard their words. I saw their hearts." She paused, letting the moment sink in. Humanity did not invade Council space. Humanity did not conquer anyone. Humanity simply refused to accept that older species have the right to rule younger species forever. We simply asked, why must we be small? Why must we accept weakness as the price of peace? Why must we bow to a council that treats us as inferior? The message spread like wildfire. On Thessar ocean worlds, it was replayed and discussed. Among Cathari colonies, it sparked fierce debates. Even on the Council's home worlds, younger citizens began to question whether their leaders were truly right. Keln wanted to silence the broadcast. He demanded that the Synth Collective shut it down. But Iris 7 calmly refused. She explained that the Synth Collective was a neutral body dedicated to the free flow of information. They could not suppress speech simply because the Council disagreed with it. It was another loss for Keln. Another crack in his authority. General Park Ho observed all these developments from a human military headquarters hidden in deep space. He had not expected the Council to collapse quite so quickly. He had prepared humanity for a long, difficult war. Instead, he was watching the Council tear itself apart from within. But he was wise enough to know that this was not victory yet. Keln was wounded, but wounded animals were often the most dangerous. The Council's military was still powerful, and pride, wounded pride, could drive even ancient civilizations to reckless action. Captain Minseo, monitoring communications from the Council worlds, agreed with Park Ho's assessment. "They are preparing something," she told him. "The military leaders are pushing Keln toward direct confrontation. They cannot accept the loss of control. They believe that a show of overwhelming military force will restore their authority." "When?" Park Ho asked. "Soon," Minseo replied. Within days, they will send a fleet, a large one, and they will expect to crush us completely. Park Ho nodded slowly. This was what he had been preparing for. The moment when the Council stopped using economic pressure and started using military force. The moment when the real test would come. "How long do we need to prepare the fleet?" he asked. "We are ready now," Minseo said. "We have always been ready. We just needed to make sure the Council was divided enough that they could not support each other militarily. Now they are. The Vorga will not send ships. The Cathari are split. The Thessar are reluctant. When the Council sends their fleet, they will be sending mostly their own forces, and whoever among the member species still obeys without question." Park Ho stood and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Council was preparing for war. Somewhere out there, ancient weapons of mass destruction were being loaded onto ancient warships. The Galactic Council, which had never been truly challenged in 10,000 years, was about to discover what it meant to face an enemy that would not surrender. And humanity was ready. The Council fleet emerged from the darkness of space like an avalanche of metal and light. 300 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had built. Ships that had conquered worlds. Ships that carried weapons capable of destroying entire cities. Ships that had not faced any real opposition in thousands of years. At the head of this fleet was Admiral Vexthor, a crystalline being almost as ancient as Keln himself. He had commanded the Council's military forces for 800 years. He had never lost a battle. He had never faced an enemy that could stand against his tactics. He had never doubted his own superiority. The human fleet gathered at a location called the Crimson Gate, a massive space structure that formed a natural choke point between Council space and the Outer Rim. General Park Ho had chosen this location carefully. It would limit the Council's ability to use their numerical advantage. It would funnel their large ships into a space where smaller, faster human vessels could be effective. The human fleet numbered 85 ships, against 300. The odds seemed impossible, but Captain Minseo had planned for this. Every human ship was equipped with Kyung-il's quantum phase technology. Every human captain had been trained in tactics that emphasized speed, precision, and unpredictability. Every weapon had been calibrated for maximum efficiency. Park Ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, a ship called the Soul Victory. He was calm, almost serene. All around him, officers worked at their stations, monitoring communications, tracking the approaching Council fleet, preparing weapons systems. The energy in the room was intense but focused. "They are confident," Minseo observed. She stood beside Park Ho, analyzing the Council fleet's movements. "They are moving in traditional formation. They expect us to either flee or attempt a direct confrontation. They do not expect anything else." "Good," Park Ho said simply. "Let them be confident. Confidence makes you careless." The first volley of fire came from the Council fleet, 300 ships releasing weapons at once. It was a display of overwhelming power, meant to intimidate. The human fleet's shields flared as thousands of weapons found their targets, but the Soul Victory barely shook. Kyung-il's quantum phase shielding was holding, absorbing and distributing the energy of the attack in ways that traditional shields could not. "Return fire," Park Ho said calmly. The human fleet responded, not with a massive volley that attempted to match the Council's firepower. Instead, they targeted something specific: the Council fleet's supply ships and communication relays. They targeted the infrastructure that held the enormous fleet together. Admiral Vexthor watched from his command ship as several of his supply vessels suddenly went dark. How had the humans done that? The supply ships were surrounded by protection, escorted by fast attack craft. They should have been safe. But human ships were already moving to the next position, to the next target. They were like water flowing around obstacles, striking from unexpected angles. They were not attempting to match the Council's firepower. They were attempting to cripple the Council's ability to function as a unified force. "Adjust formation," Vex Thor commanded. "Tighten the escort around the supply lines. All ships, move to a defensive posture. The humans are trying to separate us. Do not allow it." But the human ships were too fast. Even as the Council fleet tried to reorganize, more human vessels were striking at different targets. A communications relay here, a fuel depot there, a maintenance station somewhere else. The human strategy was becoming clear. They were not fighting the Council fleet. They were fighting the system that held the Council fleet together. Minseo watched the battle unfold from the Sol Victory's tactical display. Everything was going according to plan. The Council had sent their fleet expecting to crush humanity through overwhelming power. Instead, they had brought that overwhelming power into a space where such power was useless. You could not kill an enemy that was always somewhere else. You could not destroy ships that seemed to appear and disappear like ghosts. "They are requesting reinforcements," one of the communication officers reported. "Admiral Vex Thor is sending distress signals to the Council homeworlds." Parko nodded. This was expected. "Continue the attacks on their supply lines. Do not engage their main fleet directly. Let them come to us, and they will come to us exhausted and disorganized." Days passed. The battle at the Crimson Gate became a lesson in modern warfare. The Council's traditional tactics, effective for thousands of years, proved useless against human innovation. Every attempt to reorganize the fleet was met with attacks on their new position. Every attempt to advance was disrupted by human ships striking at vulnerable points. The Cathari, who had been assigned to support the Council fleet, suddenly reported mechanical problems with their ships. Mysteriously, their engines needed to be repaired. The Thessar sent only a small force, claiming they could not spare more ships. The Vorga, after hearing that the Council was losing, decided they had business elsewhere. The Council's fleet was being abandoned by its own allies. Vex Thor's ancient mind began to comprehend what was happening. This was not just a military defeat. This was a fundamental failure of the system that the Galactic Council had built over 10,000 years. The system depended on fear, on the certainty that the Council was invincible. Once that certainty was broken, the entire system began to collapse. "Sound the retreat," Vex Thor finally commanded. The words seemed to cost him something, some essential part of himself. The Council fleet withdrew, leaving behind damaged ships and destroyed supply vessels. They had come to crush humanity and had been humiliated instead. Admiral Vex Thor had never retreated before. The Galactic Council had never retreated before. Everything had changed. On Earth, on human colonies across the Outer Rim, people gathered to hear the news. The Galactic Council had attacked, and humanity had won. Not by being stronger or bigger, not by having more ships or more weapons, by being smarter, by being faster, by refusing to fight the Council's war according to the Council's rules. Jiwoo stood in front of the assembly of world leaders and made an announcement that would echo across the galaxy. The Galactic Council has learned that humanity will not surrender. The Galactic Council has learned that we are not a weak species to be controlled and commanded. Today we proved that we are a people worth respecting. And we are ready to negotiate with the Council as equals. The words spread across the galaxy in broadcasts and messages. Even the Council species heard them. And in those words, they heard something that had not been heard in 10,000 years. The voice of a civilization that had challenged the Galactic Council and won. Keln received the news of the retreat in his crystal chamber. His light flickered and dimmed. For the first time in thousands of years, he felt fear. Real, genuine fear. He had believed that the Council was eternal, unchangeable, destined to rule forever. But eternal things could break. Unchangeable things could change. Destinies could be rewritten. The Galactic Council faced a choice: adapt and accept a new order, or cling to the old ways and watch everything collapse. That night, Several council members sent secret messages to human representatives. They wanted to talk, not as masters commanding inferiors, but as equals seeking compromise. The age of the Galactic Council's absolute power was ending, and the age of humanity's emergence as a true galactic power was beginning.